The embassy dome smelled faintly of static discharge and overcooked root vegetables, an unfortunate byproduct of housing 36 alien dignitaries and a human catering unit that still couldn't pronounce Quarnkeli leaves without triggering a diplomatic incident. Selari stood near the panoramic window, her arms folded across the ridges of her formal tunic, watching as the Terran vessel descended through Nevrith's translucent atmosphere. It came in slow, almost bashful, like it knew it was being judged. "Why does it wobble like that?" she asked aloud, not really expecting a response. Beside her, Curator Thoranas's ears twitched in disgust. "Because humans believe manual control is heroic, as though defying gravity is more noble if one is also courting death." Selari didn't laugh. She wanted to. His tone practically demanded it, but she was too busy masking her dread with professionalism. Today marked the start of the Interplanetary Cultural Synthesis Accord, or, as she privately dubbed it, the Galactic Group Therapy Initiative. She'd been selected as Elyari representative not for her warmth or wit, but because she could be relied on to not project thoughts accidentally during formal encounters. Usually, the vessel landed with a hiss and a thump, not elegant, not silent, very human, and then he stepped out. Jonas Wren looked nothing like the stories. No wild gestures, no puffed chest, no sweat-soaked bravado. Just a man in a crisply pressed Federation uniform, holding a datapad in one hand and a small potted plant in the other. He blinked slowly at the Elyari reception committee, offered a courteous nod, and said, "Hi, sorry I'm late." Gary had a panic attack in the airlock. The Elyari stared. He held up the plant. "This is Gary." One of the junior diplomats choked. Selari felt something shift in her chest. She wasn't sure if it was amusement or horror. She stepped forward, formal smile in place. "Captain Wren, welcome to Nevrith. I am Selari, diplomatic liaison and protocol supervisor." He bowed, but it came off more like a tired yoga stretch. "Thank you, Liaison Selari. Gary and I are honored." "You're speaking of the plant." "Well, I wouldn't say speaking for him, but he has opinions." She stared. He grinned. The moment stretched uncomfortably so until she gestured stiffly toward the reception chamber. "Shall we proceed with the tour?" "Please." Gary's never seen a high-oxygen dome before. He's very excited. You can tell because he's leaning left. Thoranas muttered, "May the stars have mercy." The initial walkthrough was uneventful if you discounted Jonas's constant stream of observations, jokes, and subtle references that none of the Elyari understood. At one point, he tapped a glowing artifact and said, "Is this the galactic equivalent of a lava lamp?" At another, he mistook a meditation basin for a soup bowl and nearly caused an interspecies incident, until Selari caught the corner of his jacket just in time. "Captain Wren," she said through gritted teeth, "please refrain from touching anything with a shimmer index above 0.7. Noted, no touchy the sparkly things." Despite everything, he was, she had to admit, oddly respectful. Not in the sycophantic way humans often were around alien technology, but in the way one behaves at an unfamiliar dinner party, hoping not to offend the host or the furniture. Later, in the cultural interchange chamber, Jonas was presented with Elyari literature. Instead of feigning interest, he flipped through the holobook with a thoughtful frown and murmured, "Your poetry structure is fascinating. There's a rhythm under the rhythm, like mathematical jazz." She blinked. "That is an apt description. And here I thought I'd just insulted your ancestors." "You still might have." He smiled, noted again. Over the next few days, Selari found herself in the unlikely role of translator, not just of language but of human behavior. The Elyari Council would summon her nightly for updates. "Does he sleep?" "Yes." "Does he consume anything suspicious?" He requested toast. "Toast?" "Flattened bread, mildly burned. Apparently it is considered breakfast." They were appalled, yet Jonas Wren continued to confound. He wandered the botanical gardens asking questions no one had thought to ask. Why do Elyari plants hum at night? Could the bioluminescent moss be used to treat seasonal depression in Terrans? Was it true that Elyari brainwaves harmonized with certain harmonic frequencies? He is inquisitive, Celari reported on the fifth day. Like a child, Theranas asked hopefully. No, she replied slowly. Like a scientist who isn't afraid of sounding foolish. They didn't know what to do with that. And then there was the moment in the observatory. It was just the two of them, a pause between scheduled events. She'd been reviewing protocol logs and he'd been meditating, sort of. He was lying on the floor with his eyes closed, listening to Elyari ambient soundscapes, strange harmonic pulses tuned to the neural frequencies of their species. Helps me think, he explained when she raised an eyebrow. You understand the frequencies? Nope, he said cheerfully, but my brain s into it, Gary too. She laughed before she could stop herself. He cracked one eye open. Did I just make an Elyari laugh? Is that legal? She looked away. It is uncommon. Cool, I'm basically a cultural pioneer now. I expect a statue. Maybe next to the meditation basin/soup bowl. Something was unraveling. A thread of wariness pulling loose from her carefully woven defenses. He didn't try to impress her. He didn't even seem particularly concerned with whether or not she liked him. And yet, he saw her, not as an Elyari, not as a diplomat, just as a person. On the seventh day, she found herself outside his quarters, unsure why she was there. The door opened before she knocked. Hey, he said, want to help me repot Gary? He's grown roots in the emergency rations. I suppose that is urgent. Oh, it is. They're the only snacks with flavor. She stepped inside. The walls were decorated with Terran art, prints of old science fiction novels, portraits of astronauts, and, inexplicably, a picture of a dog wearing sunglasses. Your companion is colorful. He glanced at the photo. That's Captain Wolf, my childhood hero. I see. They worked in silence for a while, and then he asked, why don't Elyari form bonds with humans? She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was quiet. We were taught that humans are impulsive, that your emotions run too hot, that you don't endure. And you believe that. She looked at him, really looked. I believe you are different. He smiled, soft this time. Not a joke, just truth. Same, he said. And outside, the stars blinked with the quiet kind of approval reserved for those who dared to rewrite the stories they were told. Celari was not used to waking up with thoughts of humans. Certainly not one particular human. Certainly not about whether he had remembered to feed his plant, or whether he was serious last night when he said he was teaching Gary to respond to musical cues. And yet her first conscious thought was, did Gary learn to hum? The question annoyed her. She pushed it away with a meditation cycle, carefully modulating her breathing in thirds, inhale, exhale, release. It was a technique designed to purge distraction. Unfortunately, the image of Jonah's wren with dirt under his fingernails, and a contented smile remained embedded in her synaptic memory like an unpatched glitch in a neural archive. By mid-morning, she had managed to reassert her professional composure, which lasted precisely until Jonas appeared in the Arboretum wearing a MAKE Space Peaceful Again t-shirt and holding a thermos. Good morning, Ambassador of the Long-Eared Order, he said with an exaggerated bow. She stared at the shirt. That phrase is culturally nonsensical. I know, that's why it's funny. Want some coffee? She raised a brow. I've read reports of this Terran stimulant. It causes elevated heart rate, erratic behavior, and mild dependency. He grinned. Exactly, it's diplomacy juice. She didn't respond. He offered the thermos again, more gently this time. It's decaf. She took it cautiously. The flavor resembles burned foliage. Yeah, we treasure that. They sat on a moss bench beneath the shimmer-vined canopy, an unofficial pause in the day's programmed exchanges. Around them, the Elyari flora pulsed with a rhythm only their species could hear, except Jonah's, apparently, who tapped his fingers as if trying to guess the beat. Still haven't figured it out, he muttered. It's not a pattern meant to be understood by non-Elyari, she said. Doesn't mean it's not worth trying. He squinted. Is it like a 7-8 times signature? She stared. You do not have to understand everything. Sure I do. I'm a human. If we don't understand something, we either fall in love with it or blow it up. She blinked. Those are extremely dissimilar outcomes. Not for us. Honestly, sometimes it's both. She let out a breath that was suspiciously close to a laugh. Their silence this time was companionable, even peaceful, but it didn't last long. A calm signal flared across her internal implant. The council. She stood. I'm summoned. Likely a status report. Try not to quote Terran literature to the Moss while I'm gone. No promises, he said, lifting the thermos in salute. The council chamber smelled of sun-pressed parchment and moral superiority. High Curator Thoranas's ears twitched the moment she entered. You've spent 9 hours and 16 minutes with the human this week, he said without preamble. I was unaware my schedule was under surveillance. You are a public official. Your proximity to the human captain has raised concerns. Another counselor chimed in. It is inappropriate for a representative of Nevrith to show personal preference. She kept her tone flat. Is shared laughter now considered diplomatic misconduct? If it leads to bonding, yes. I see. Theranas leaned forward, his voice sharper. They are impermanent, emotional, illogical. You risk attachment to a species that treats affection like a recreational activity. She bristled. And yet their loyalty outlasts wars. Their grief spans generations. I have witnessed Terrans mourn ancestors they never met. Is that impermanence? He narrowed his eyes. Be cautious, Salari. Curiosity is forgivable. Entanglement is not. Back on the vessel, Jonas was in the shared lab, utterly failing to program a nanofilter. When she arrived, he looked up, sheepish. So apparently, Elyari filtration systems are not compatible with Terran air fresheners. I may have temporarily filled this quadrant with the scent of. He paused, sniffed, pineapple. Possibly synthetic pineapple. She sighed and waved her hand. I've inhaled worse. Really? Yes. Once, during an ambassadorial exchange on Kren V, I encountered a species that exhaled liquefied minerals. Their laughter caused mild calcification. He grinned. That's either horrifying or the weirdest skincare regimen I've ever heard. She leaned against the console, looking at him for a long moment. Why are you here, Jonas? You mean? Existentially. I mean in this program. You had no obligation to volunteer. He hesitated. I like people, even weird, confusing, telepathic ones who pretend they don't have a sense of humor. She tilted her head. That is not an answer. He shrugged. Then maybe it's this. I've spent my whole life watching the universe through filtered scopes, reading translations, listening to second-hand stories. I wanted to see it myself, meet the myths, maybe even prove a few wrong. She didn't look away. Have you proven any wrong yet? Working on it, he said softly. She opened her mouth to respond, but the ship's warning klaxon sounded, loud and abrupt. Her hand flew to her communicator. Unscheduled anomaly, came the AI's voice. Spatial flux detected. They raced to the command deck. Outside the viewport, space warped, not violently, but like a ripple across glass. Something shimmered in the distance, then fractured. A temporal rift, she whispered. Impossible, this region is stable. Jonas leaned over the console. I've seen readings like this once before. Black zone near Delta Pathos. It collapsed in on itself. Containment field now. They worked in tandem, calibrating the energy matrix with their respective systems. Hers neural, his manual. Every keystroke hummed with urgency. Redirect phase oscillators. Channel frequency to 4.7, she instructed. He nodded. Done. Rotating magnetic alignment. The field stabilized just barely. The rift flickered, then dimmed, sealed. She exhaled. He looked at her. Teamwork. She nodded. Unexpected, but effective. A pause. Then he added, so, does this count as a second date? She blinked. We were not on a date. Well, now you tell me. I nearly died trying to impress you. She shook her head, unable to stop the ghost of a smile. Later, as they stood beneath the recalibrated star maps, Jonas said something so quietly she almost missed it. "I'm not fragile, you know, just human." She looked up at him, the stars painting shadows on his face. "I'm not fearless," she replied, "just Elyari." Their eyes met in the silence between galaxies, and the space between them grew smaller still. The hologrid pulsed under her fingers, projecting three-dimensional schematics of the rift anomaly in slow, spiraling loops. Selari traced each layer with a narrowed gaze, filtering data through both neural interface and intuition. Behind her, someone cleared their throat with theatrical emphasis. "Permission to enter your floating mind palace." Jonas leaned against the doorframe holding two mugs. "One of these is coffee, the other is. Well, it's technically classified, but it's got cinnamon and might violate at least 3 nutritional guidelines." She didn't turn. "If either contain neural stabilizers, I might accept." He stepped forward. He sat beside her on the observation ledge. "You've been in here for hours. I'm pretty sure the sensors started assuming you were part of the furniture. I am reviewing residual time signatures from the rift." There was a distinct harmonic fluctuation before it closed. Like it was trying to talk. Not in a linguistic sense, but yes, possibly a pattern untranslated. He nodded slowly. "Okay, so it's either a cosmic distress signal or space jazz." She arched an eyebrow. "Why do you always default to music metaphors?" "Because I failed physics and passed songwriting. Also, everything's better with a good beat. Even the end of reality." She stared at the projection again. "This event was not random." "Which means someone caused it." She nodded, "or something." Their silence thickened. Then, without looking at her, Jonas added, "Council's worried, aren't they?" "Yes. About the rift." She hesitated. "About me." "Because of us." She didn't answer. Jonas leaned back, letting the projection reflect against his uniform. "I can talk to them." "You'll make it worse." "I can accidentally talk to them." She almost smiled. "That's a guarantee." His expression shifted slightly. "Do you regret this, getting close to me?" She considered it, not the question but the weight of her answer. "I do not regret what is true, and this is true." His eyes softened. "For what it's worth, I like our weird, undefined truth." Before she could respond, the ship's alarm system trilled in a minor key. A personalized setting Jonas claimed made emergencies feel less judgy. A transmission pulsed through the room. "Attention, external probe proximity alert. Origin, Elyari vessel. Designation, Curator flagship Seleniath Prime." She straightened. "That's Thorana's." He sighed. "Should I hide the cinnamon contraband?" She stood. "He already disapproves of your species. Adding dietary violations may inspire a planetary embargo. Bold of you to assume we didn't already deserve one." In the formal reception chamber, Thoranas's hologram materialized with maximum hauteur. His ears were taller than usual, a sign of stress or possibly ego inflation. "Selari," he said without preamble, "you are hereby recalled for reassessment." She stiffened. "On what grounds?" "Behavioral compromise, emotional entanglement with a Terran, a human no less." Jonas raised a hand. "Quick question. Do you guys ever call us by name, or is human your version of a 4-letter word?" Theranas ignored him. "You will report to the council within 3 rotations." Jonas opened his mouth again. Selari interjected. "Understood, Curator. I will comply." The transmission ended. He turned to her. "I didn't mean to." She shook her head. "You did nothing wrong. This is politics, legacy, fear pretending to be tradition. I can come with you." "That would escalate the situation." "Escalation's my specialty. Also baking." She looked at him, really looked. "This is not a battle you can fight for me. I can stand next to you, though." The next day she packed. He hovered nearby, pretending to organize supplies. "Can I give you something before you go? If it sings, I'll throw it into orbit." He handed her a data chip. "No singing, just a song, human composition, 1974. Lyrics might offend your council." She tucked it away. "That's almost a promise." They stood in silence. "I'll be back," she said. "I'll hold you to that." She turned to go, paused. "Jonas." "Yeah." "Gary needs water every third cycle." He saluted. "The plant or me?" "Both." Back on Nevrith, the council chamber was colder than she remembered. The light refracted through crystal panels, casting long shadows across the stone floor. She stood alone before them. "State your intent," Thorana said. "I stand by my decisions." "You defy centuries of guidance." "I defy fear." A murmur rippled through the council. She didn't flinch. "You would bond with an outsider." "I would choose him. Not because he is Terran, because he is Jonas." "Silence, then you are dismissed." As she exited, her neural implant flickered. A message, unauthorized, from Jonas. It read, "Status still not fragile. Gary says HI. Also, I made toast." Again, "Why do I do this to myself?" She smiled. And somewhere, despite bureaucracy and history and echoing halls of judgment, she knew the truth was still hers to keep. The hearing chamber had been silent for 17 seconds. In Elyari terms, this meant war or worse, an uncomfortable philosophical debate. Selari stood unmoving, the air thick with the expectations of her ancestors, her mentors, and at least 24 unnamed relatives who likely monitored her decisions via neural proxy. "Would you," asked Counselor Vyerth with the stiff tone of someone about to assign a punishment disguised as enlightenment, "describe this human as emotionally stable?" She blinked. "He keeps a plant as a companion and names his vacuum drone Mapatha Christi. Make of that what you will." Several counselors exchanged confused looks. Thorana's interjected, "This is no time for humor." "Respectfully," Selari said without apology, "I believe it is exactly the time." The council did not laugh. That was fine. She wasn't there to entertain. She was there to be heard. Unfortunately, most of them preferred the sound of their own internal wisdom spirals. "You exhibit signs of cultural defection," Thorana's pressed. "Prioritizing affection over allegiance, emotion over equilibrium." Selari's fingers twitched at her side. "And what is diplomacy, if not emotion disciplined by purpose?" Silence again. Longer this time. The kind of silence you could build a cathedral inside and still hear your own doubt echoing. A signal broke the moment. Unauthorized transmission. The guards reacted first until the source clarified. Terran Diplomatic Channel, Priority Marker 1A, Personal Testimony Request. Thorana's frowned. "What is this?" "Jonas," Selari whispered, then louder. "He's exercising a clause in the Cross-Cultural Defense Accords. Any partner of a targeted envoy may request audience. We never approved a bond." "No," she said, "but neither did you deny it in time." The transmission engaged. A flickering hologram formed, and Jonas Wren stood before the council, clean uniform, controlled stance, and an expression that read somewhere between respectful defiance and mild caffeine withdrawal. "Hi," he began. "I wasn't sure if I should start with a quote or an apology, but since you're Elyari and allergic to both, I'll just say this. I'm not here to beg. I'm here to clarify." A counselor scoffed. He raised an eyebrow. "I know what you think of humans, that we're too emotional, too impulsive, too quick to love." He paused. "You're right. That got their attention. But that doesn't mean we love poorly, and not all of us love fast. Some of us," he gestured gently toward Selari, "take our time. We listen. We notice the way she steadies her breath before answering, how she quotes bylaws like they're sacred texts but still steals time to smile at vines in the arboretum, how she sees the universe not just as stars and science but as something worthy of kindness." Another pause, no interruptions. The chamber was a vacuum now. "I don't want to take her from your world," he said. "I just want to be part of the one she's choosing to build. If that's wrong, then maybe wrong is what's needed." Thorana's inhaled sharply, clearly readying a rebuttal involving history, tradition, and the fact that humans once worshipped flaming baked goods. But before he could speak, the chamber lights flickered. A red pulse, alert pattern delta, a new voice over the intercom. Counselors, we are receiving priority telemetry from the Unity Dawn. The rift has reopened. Chaos, not Elyari chaos, which looked like furrowed brows and murmuring, but actual emergency-level chaos, swept the chamber. Selari spun toward the central console. Project visuals. Immediate. A starfield appeared, fractured. The rift had expanded. Not a simple spatial anomaly this time. Pulses of energy rippled through subspace. The readings fluctuated wildly, power spikes, neural static, and temporal bleed, Selari whispered. It's dragging fragments from alternate timelines. Theranas was already tapping commands. We must evacuate the region. Nevrith's moon is within proximity. No, she said, we contain it. You would risk exposure. I have already risked worse, and I understand its signature. She turned to Jonas. I need your help. He blinked. I'm not exactly qualified to seal space-time ruptures. You're qualified to hold the neural harmonizer, while I override the field sync. He blinked again. So, assistant to the rift technician. Technically, assistant with coffee privileges. They moved quickly, boarding the diplomatic cruiser Tessera's Grace with council approval barely logged. The rift swirled in the distance, larger now, like a wound that had remembered it was meant to bleed. Selari donned the harmonics rig, attaching the neural relay to her temples. Jonas held up the harmonizer device. So I just hold it and don't sneeze. Do not sneeze. Right, emotionally stable, definitely not terrified. They synced the system. Waves of data flooded her mind, flashes of variant realities, echoes of things that hadn't happened yet. Jonas beside her, older. Jonas not there at all. A version of her laughing in an embassy, wearing something bright. A version crying in the dark. She grounded herself in the present, in this Jonas, this moment, this choice. Stabilizing, she whispered. We need a frequency anchor. He reached out, not metaphorically, literally took her hand. The harmonizer pulsed, that anchor enough. She nodded, hold. The rift twisted once more, then compressed inward, sealed by their combined harmonic pattern. It wasn't technology that closed it. It wasn't politics. It was resonance. Afterward, back on Nevrith, the council stood again in silence. This time not from judgment. Theranas spoke last. You have proven that unity is not mandated. It is chosen. Selari inclined her head. Then let us choose wisely. Jonas looked around. So, is this where we get one of those decorative awards, or? Nobody answered. Later in the arboretum, Selari passed him a small container. He opened it. Toast. Burned just enough. I replicated it, she said. He beamed. It's perfect. It's terrible. Exactly. They sat in silence, Gary humming faintly nearby. The plant had started vibrating to ambient Elyari music. Jonas swore it was dancing. Selari was unconvinced. Selari. Yes. Does this mean we're officially entangled? I believe that's what the toast signifies. He smiled. She leaned against him. And somewhere beyond the calculations and the chaos and the carefully preserved protocols, the universe recorded its softest anomaly. 2 frequencies. In tune. The deck of the embassy starcraft Elantris had been repolished 3 times that morning. Not by order, but by Jonas, who insisted that first impressions are more important when you're the galactic poster children for interspecies diplomacy. Selari had pointed out that no ambassador in recorded history had ever cared about floor reflections. He countered by slipping on one sock and announcing, exactly, we're innovating. The corridors buzzed with quiet preparation. The ship, jointly commissioned by the Terran Federation and the Elyari Council, was a floating symbol of collaboration, progress, and Jonas's growing collection of poorly punned room names. The forward observation deck was now Starry McViewface. He had not been forgiven. Morning, Commander, he said as Selari entered the central hub. She eyed him. You renamed the medbay Spleentopia. Accurate and whimsical. 2 birds, 1 quantum stone. She sighed, but the sigh was fond. He handed her a tablet. Final readiness report. No anomalies. All systems optimal. Gary is thriving, in case you were wondering. I was. You always say that. And yet you've monitored his chlorophyll levels twice this week. That was scientific curiosity. That's what I say about watching you meditate. Their banter was interrupted by a soft chime. Incoming transmission. Priority level. Ceremonial. The display flared. 2 split screens. On the left, the Elyari Council in ceremonial attire standing so still they might have been holograms. On the right, the Terran delegation, casually overdressed and slightly out of sync. One delegate sneezed into her elbow and mouthed, "Sorry." Thorana spoke first. "The Elantris is cleared for interstellar diplomatic initiative. May its journey reflect the unity forged through trial." "Through trust," Selari corrected. Jonas added, "and through shared horror at replicated cafeteria food." One Terran delegate chuckled. Another Elyari twitched an ear disapprovingly. Progress. After the transmission ended, the ship disengaged from its orbital dock. Selari watched as Nevrith's twin moons faded into the distance. Jonas stood beside her. "We're officially space's least likely power couple." "That was unofficial before. Just wanted to hear you say it." She turned toward him, expression unreadable. "You have changed." He blinked. "Is that good? You no longer flinch before speaking to my people." "True. I've replaced flinching with internal screaming. Very mature." She studied him. "And I no longer doubt that humans can choose constancy." He grinned. "Are you saying I've earned your trust?" "I'm saying you've earned ours." That quieted him. For once, words didn't rush to fill the air. He just reached out and laced his fingers through hers. Hours later, during their scheduled media transmission, mandatory, Jonas claimed, "So future species can watch our awkward love story in space reruns." They answered questions from across the starweb. A Nevrithan scholar asked if Selari had plans to return permanently. "I serve both worlds now," she said, "but I carry Nevrith with me, and it grows beside me, like a very persistent vine." Jonas whispered, "That's Gary." A Terran child asked Jonas what it felt like to fall in love with an alien. He smiled. "Like realizing gravity isn't just pulling you down, it's pulling you toward something." Selari muttered, "Overly poetic. Redact that before the replay." A rogue AI asked for permission to compose a love ballad in binary. Jonas approved it instantly. Selari did not. By the end of the week, the Elantris had become more than a vessel. It was a classroom, a lab, a neutral ground, a place where mistranslated idioms sparked friendships and shared silence built respect. Thoranas visited once, only once. He inspected the crew, toured the engine room, made a brief comment about Jonas's sock choices being a form of rebellion, and stood for an hour on the observation deck without saying a word. As he left, he said, "You are no longer the liaison." Selari tensed. "You are the example." She nodded. "I accept." Jonas whispered, "Did he just compliment us? I believe he may need medical assistance." The next rotation brought them to Kellen Station, where a celebration had been planned, partially to honor the mission, mostly because Terrans would turn anything into a festival if you gave them 6 hours and a sound system. There was music. Some of it improvised. Some of it in keys Selari claimed had never before existed in the known galaxy. Jonas danced. Badly. He spun her once, tripped over a misplaced gravity stabilizer and crashed into a diplomatic server. She caught him before he fell. "Still fragile?" he asked, breathless. "Still human," she said. They danced again. Later in their shared quarters, quiet and still beneath a sky that didn't belong to any one species, Jonas asked, "Did you ever think it would end like this?" She shook her head. "I thought it would end with distance, with duty, with silence." "And now," she said, "it does not end, it continues." He leaned back. "You've gone poetic again. It's contagious. I should file a report." "You'll misfile it under important documents I forgot to back up." "Only once. 3 times. Okay, but one of those was Gary's tax record. He claims dependency." She laughed. He did too.